Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. I've had a lot of requests for this guest to come back on. Just a couple recently. One from California. It's apropos because he lives in California at the moment. He buys and sells between $50 to $100 million a year in real estate. He has the Note House. His name is Fabian Calvo. I'm going to bring him on. Fabian Calvo, thank you for joining us today from California.
Hey, Greg, pleasure to be back on.
I want to start here by saying a couple of things you said, and I want to say it's late 14s the last time you were on. I'm sorry I haven't had you back on. I've had an embarrassment of bookings, but in 14 you said that they were going to pour the coals to the subprime. They're going to recreate a bubble all over again. That happened. And you said, hey, this is going to go on for at least a couple of 2016, I think. This is going to be going on to 2016. That happened. The real estate market's crazy. Now they're talking about it's going to, some people, I've actually heard real estate people say that, oh, this is going to go on to the year 2020. And you're cutting back here. Tell me what's going on in the real estate market.
Yeah, Greg, like I said, pleasure to be on. And for people who haven't heard, our interviews before or heard my work before, I would just first let them know to go back to the first interviews that you and I did, I think back in 2012, where I basically forecasted everything that's going on. And everything has unfolded from the, really started, Greg, from of me being vocal about this, which caught a lot of scorn from people that I do business with, but from a micro documentary that I put together back in end of 2011 called House of Cards, Real Estate's Big Secret. And when I released that micro documentary, people thought that it was absolutely insane and crazy that the same people that had manipulated the housing market before were doing it all over again, and were doing it on purpose to profit from what I believe is the biggest pump and dump scheme ever created. And certainly that has happened. And we look at what's going on today in the real estate market since the crash of 2007 is that the Case-Shiller Index just beat expectations in March. We have April pending sales and medium values, the highest they've been in 8 years. We have Wells Fargo, Bank of America coming out with 3% money down loans, and then instead of the no money down loans, what they've done now through the Obama administration and many other projects is they've come up with these down payment assistance programs, which is the federal government giving money to these local agencies. So in essence, it's a no money down loan to fuel this housing bubble, which is really starting to verge on a hyper bubble like we see in the stock market today. So it's amazing what's happening to see it all repeat again. I think that it's going to spill over into the election year, and we'll continue to see prices go up as we have these cheap interest rates and cheap money, which has no value, creating this artificial boom.
Well, when you talk about the hyper bubble, tell me what you mean when you talk about the hyper bubble. We're getting a replay of 07, 08 again?
Absolutely, we're getting there. I think we're at the last final stage of this current housing cycle, and that's where the prices will take off exponentially, as will the access to cheap money. Now, the cheap money has been somewhat on the sidelines when it comes to uncreditworthy borrowers or people in general being able to get home loans. That has significantly altered over the last 6 months. I speak to a couple dozen mortgage bankers, mortgage brokers across the country, and they're all telling me it's getting much easier. Most recently, Wells Fargo announced a very quick and easy way for borrowers with, I think it's a 580 or 560 credit score, to get approved for a home loan that they'll immediately turn and sell to Fannie Mae. So it's the same exact thing that we saw happen in 2006, 2005, where you fog up a mirror, you can get a home loan. And we're seeing this happen across multiple markets, and that's why we see prices continue to go up. And they're going to go up exponentially, I believe, especially in this election year. I think what's important to understand, Greg, is that, everything leads back to economics, but also it ties into politics. The bankers on Wall Street that are creating this fake, phony boom in real estate, they're all in the bag for Hillary Clinton. If we see a crash in the economy or in housing or in stock markets, that's going to hurt her directly because it's going to basically say Obama's policies have failed. So they're going to keep this going, I think, past the election year into 2017, I believe. And every time I say this, every time I put out a video on YouTube or I put out, something on my LinkedIn page, I will always get people, Greg, that say that's never going to happen. It's totally crazy, and it happens. It's amazing, but it's going on. I should also note one of the things that continues to fuel the market as well is foreign demand for real estate, particularly the Chinese, who this year will likely buy $250 billion of real estate in the United States. And that's spread over multiple assets, whether it's industrial, commercial, or residential. So it's continuing to create this fake demand, and in some cases real demand by the Chinese, but it's unsustainable and it's going to end really badly eventually. Unfortunately, when I see people, big players like Sam Zell, who's a big real estate guy, beginning to sell off assets, to me that's an indicator that, it's going to be the middle class and the people at the end that are the suckers that are going to get left holding the bag.
So you're telling me that Sam Zell, because that was a big story out last week, Sam Zell sees what you see. There was a big story on about with Zero Hedge, saying he was selling, he was getting out, he was gone, bye-bye. He's not buying anything. He hates everything. You think that he sees what you see? He sees what you call a hyper bubble in real estate?
Yeah, no question. Listen, I have a lot of friends that know Sam Zell personally, and he knows it's a hyper bubble, and that's why he's selling just like he did leading up to the prior crash. It's why a lot of people, say that he's like the, perfect market timer. And he's going to buy when prices tank again. But here's what's really interesting that your viewers may not know, Greg, is we have already been sidelined, literally hundreds of billions of dollars on the sidelines from hedge funds, from high net worth players, private equity companies that know the next crash is coming, and they're already creating what's called these vulture funds that we saw back in 2007 to come in and buy these assets when they fall in value again. Also, a lot of these hedge funds, private equities that bought, thousands and millions of homes across the countries as to be landlords, they're beginning to sell as well, which goes right to the crux of my theory, this pump and dump, where now they're beginning to dump these assets at the highest possible value to finance borrowers that are getting some kind of loan tied back to the federal government.
I got to tell everybody that you did. I said 2014, but you've been saying that, as you said, 2010. You were one of my first interviews, and so all along, for a couple of years, and I said 2014 because I thought we were ending. We're coming to an end. You said nope. It's going to keep going. It's going to go to probably about 2016, and you were right. I got to tell you, you were right. I want to talk to you about, if Sam Zell is getting out now, could we get into some kind of a banking calamity? I know you also have Fabian for Liberty, your popular website, which you talk, and you know a lot about the economy, not just about real estate. Do you think we could get into some sort of calamity that they don't foresee, some black swan, something, and Sam Zell's getting out, so it makes him nervous. He must not think there's that much time left. He's not going to get out, several years ahead of time. Do you think we could have some kind of a calamity this fall or this summer that could, short circuit the housing market a little early before the election?
It's certainly possible. I will say regarding Sam Zell and some of these other guys that own a lot of real estate, like in his level, Sam Zell still owns tens and tens of billions of dollars of real estate. So when they say that he's dumping assets, he's sold some of his properties. He still owns, I think, over 100 different large, gigantic apartment complexes. So he isn't dumping everything, but he has begun to sell, particularly in markets like Palo Alto, and some other markets where the prices have just gone absolutely insane relative to where he bought in 2007. So yeah, black swans are certainly possible. I think that at the end of the day, what we see now is we see the banksters on Wall Street trying to manage and control this economy with 0% interest rates that they've had for over 10 years. And that's the scary thing about it, Greg, is that they think they can control this market where we know they can't control this market. Now, some of them have gotten good at timing the market, and particularly timing these Federal Reserve created boom and bust cycles, and now we have about 16 years of those taking place. But ultimately, when this crash does happen, we'll be able to see it coming. Of course it's coming. I think it could very well happen in the next year. It could, if someone like Donald Trump, let's say, becomes president, I think we could see exactly what happened before, where it totally collapses on his watch. But it's going to be something that's unexpected. a number of different things, whether it's derivatives that blow up, whether it's a trade war that starts between China and the United States.
We already got one going on. We got a 500% steel. We got a 500% steel tariff going on right now. So yeah. I mean, we already got a trade war going in happening under the Obama administration. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to. Donald Trump has blurted out a couple of times a few months ago, and then zip quiet. He has said that that the economy is going to have a tumble, that we could have a financial meltdown. He said things like that, a crash. You think he knows it's coming?
I don't think anybody at that level that is on the front lines of business like he is can't see the handwriting on the wall. I mean, it's a big difference in the big leap from the paid-for pundits on CNBC and that write for the Wall Street Journal versus those that are actually doing deals and seeing what's going on. For example, like myself, I'm on a very small scale, relatively speaking, to some of the people that we've mentioned in this interview, but I talk to a lot of people in the business, Greg, and they all know it's coming. And a lot of them are thinking, it's coming, but it's not coming yet. And I agree with that. I don't think it's coming yet, but it is. In my business, and I've been doing this for years, I don't buy and hold anything. I buy and immediately sell. The people that I train and that I work with, clients of mine, I teach them the same thing. Buy the value and trade it, sell it immediately. Because there's no telling when this crash could happen. But certainly I think the crash is going to happen in 2017, over the next year. I will also add this, Greg, that I've heard from people just in my real estate dealings that are also involved with stocks. I think that another indicator here, and there's a few indicators. One is big money really starts selling, particularly residential real estate that they've gobbled up since 2008. Here's another one. I've been talking about the Dow Jones hitting 20,000 for about 3 years now. Now, people, when it went down to 15, I think it was July of last year, people thought that prediction was crazy. It's almost back at 18,000. I think that's an actual real thing that we're going to see happen. And, based on valuations and PE earnings, I think that's an absolute indicator of this hyperbubble. This hyperbubble is not just real estate. It's stocks, it's real estate, and it's really government debt and the dollar as well. And I think all those potentially we could see crash simultaneously.
That is exactly what Bannerino said this past weekend. He says, I think it all crashes at one time. And you think the same thing. You think when we get a crash, it all crashes at one time.
Yeah, well, I think it's totally possible. Here's another thing, too. I mean, remember, the crash started to happen. This last crash started to happen under George Bush. Obama takes office, and what does he do? He enacts policies, not only giving trillions of dollars to his cronies, but enacts policies that actually made the big banks, over the course of his presidency, 60% bigger. So let's say Hillary Clinton comes in, the crash could happen under her watch in order for her to enact additional legislation and executive orders that are going to actually make the big banks on Wall Street more powerful and the ability to profit more from these boom and bust cycles. I just said this, a few minutes ago. We look at the dot-com bubble and we see that completely blow up. And we know what happened then was we had a lot of stock guys, a lot of hedge fund people go in and start buying these companies pennies on the dollar. Well, they did the same thing in real estate this time around. They've gotten to the point in 2007. They've gotten to the point, Greg, where they're able to, with somewhat, pretty good accuracy, only because a lot of the people that they directly work with are owners and operators of the Federal Reserve. So I would submit there's all kinds of insider information taking place, which people should be going to prison for, but they never will, unfortunately. They've gotten really good at timing these Federal Reserve phony manipulated boom and bust cycles. And so this is just another perfect example of what we're seeing right now.
Charles Denner is one. I've had several people say maybe this summer. I've had people say they think this fall there could be a crash. Charles Denner is like you. He says he thinks he's going to make it into 2017, which I'm going to have him on as a guest pretty soon. So you're with some pretty good company in terms of the crash. But everybody, whether they say this summer or this fall or in 2017, nobody says beyond 2017. Not a single person I talk to, and I've talked to a ton. Nobody says beyond 2017. Do you think a crash is locked in, and that could be a simultaneous crash? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, look, I don't think it's locked in, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people are saying that the Fed has ran out of ammunition, and I would disagree with that. I mean, certainly they've tried quantitative easing. They've done the 0% interest rates now for over 10 years. One of the things that they have not done yet, which is different from QE, is this concept that Milton Friedman branded, which is helicopter money, where the Fed literally creates a ton of money, trillions of dollars, and injects it directly into banks. It doesn't buy bonds like quantitative easing, injects it directly into banks, and those banks, in essence, turn around and give loans to everybody who could fog up a mirror. That's already being talked about, Greg, by Federal Reserve chiefs. They're already saying this is what we need. The guy who owns the largest hedge fund in the world, Davio, or I forgot his name right now.
Ray Dalio.
Dalio.
Yeah, Ray Dalio.
He's advocating for helicopter money. So that's, I think, where this ends next, or where this potentially goes next. That, and another thing I've been talking about as well, which at the last G7 meeting was talked about somewhat, which is a global stimulus between Europe and the United States and some other G7 economies to continue to keep this going maybe a few more years. It just depends. Look, ultimately, the free hand of the market will win. Is a crash in 2017 locked in? I wouldn't say locked in, because these people are so incredibly desperate and arrogant that there's really no telling what they're really willing to do. I do know this though, Greg. The larger they create this bubble, the more that they fuel this bubble, ultimately the bigger the crash will be, and the more financial wreckage and devastation will be unleashed in America for the middle class and for working families and for the average American out there.
Well, Fabian, I tell you, thanks for coming on and throwing fastballs right over the plate. I really appreciate it. Your website is fabianforliberty.com. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Fabianforliberty.com. Fabian, the number 4, at liberty.com. That's your kind of your project, that your main thrust. Your main thrust is real estate, I know, but you do a good job on fabianforliberty.com. You put out a lot of information and a lot of good street level reporting is what I like to call it. I mean, you're seeing this thing, firsthand. Did anything scare you? Could anything that you foresee trip us up early that we don't get to the helicopter money, that we don't get early, like all this bank manipulation and Deutsche Bank admitting to manipulating gold, and now they're in trouble again for some other securities stuff. Is there anything that could trip us up early?
I almost hate to say this, Greg, because when people hear this, they think it's hyperbole. Unfortunately, there's a big lack. I mean, not for your audience. Your audience is likely very well educated when it comes to these topics, but historically speaking, I look at the incredible lack of just the insanity and the incompetence of quote-unquote leadership in the world today. And I think war is a potential thing that could derail this entire thing. I mean, we see, the West being belligerent with Russia, and back at it, and the Middle East completely on fire. So there's all these different things geopolitically. I wrote a book called The Global Economic Reset, and I talked about how a greater regional war, or potential world war, could break out over the South China Seas, along the borders of Russia. That's, I think, the biggest black swan that we potentially face, is something that just escalates very quickly, like we saw, for example, in World War I, that gets completely out of control. People panic, cyber attacks are unleashed, and economies fail overnight because people are so incredibly panicked at an event they thought they could never happen. Again, I hate to say that because it sounds alarmist, but to be honest, that is my personal opinion. I think when we look at black swans in general, a potential world war or out of control regional war is, I think, one of the biggest threats to the Fed's phony bubbles that they are currently inflating.
Well, there's lots of data to back up what you're saying. I mean, there is problems in South China Sea. I mean, what did Obama just do with the Vietnamese? Hey, y'all, we're going to give you weapons. I mean, no more moratorium. You're right there next to China. Here, have some state-of-the-art weapons. So, in the Middle East, it's a complete mess. And it's not like it's hyperbole. I mean, there's real stories to back up this stuff. The Middle East is an absolute mess. And who's on whose side, who knows? Thank you very much, Fabian Calvo, for joining us today. He has the company, The Note House, and, of course, he has FabianForLiberty.com. Fabian Calvo, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
You bet, Greg. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.